Hello, let me show you today another memorable attacking game of mine from 1993, many years ago, 30 years ago already. It's a game against Vasily Ivanchuk, Linares tournament. Why memorable? First of all, it was probably actually my first ever win against top 10 player, partly because it was one of my first ever games against top 10 player. And Linares 1993 was my first actually top tournament, really top tournament. Because a year before, I was actually just a top 100 player. If you are talking about beginning February 1992, I was a FIDE master. Already a top 100 player, but still very, very far from such events like Linares. Was just following the games and maybe having a dream that one day, maybe in few years, I can, if I'm lucky, maybe play once in such a tournament. And then I had an incredible year, 1992. Of course, maybe many of you remember and know that I was part of the Russian national team in Manila, 1992. Totally, unexpectedly for me because, I think it was the only time in the whole history of Russian or Soviet chess teams when actually a FIDE master got into the main national team. And when I play in Manila Olympiad, I was playing still as a FIDE master. Actually, at the very end of the Olympiad, the FIDE Congress, I was nominated Grandmaster title. So for most of the Olympiad, if not all, I played as a FIDE master. Actually, by the way, one more interesting historical fact that I was never an international master. So I had the FIDE master title and then immediately jumped to a grandmaster title. So which happened just, as I've mentioned already, just after the Manila Olympiad. And suddenly I made 8.5 out of 9 in the Manila Olympiad, the best performance in the whole Olympiad. Actually, second was Garry Kasparov, who is also incredibly high performance, but still like 10 elo points lower than me. But of course, it was much more valuable because he played on the first board. Still, so after that, I suddenly received an invitation to play Linares tournament, and of course, it was like a dream coming true. I just couldn't believe what is going on. First, they took me to play for the team at the age of 16. I actually just turned 17 and the day of the closing ceremony of Manila Olympiad. So at the age of 16, I'm playing for the Russian national team. Men's national team. I'm a FIDE master. I'm becoming a grandmaster. My rating grows and grows. I'm already like top, I'm already top 20 player, and I'm invited to Linares. So like a fairy tale, just a fairy tale. And so then I played another couple of successful tournaments. So actually, on the 1st of January 1993. I became for the first time top 10 player. I think my rating was 2685 at that time. Of course, now there is a big inflation. So, at that time it was top 10. And I was number 8, I remember. Playing Linares. So I started to prepare for this tournament. Actually didn't know what to expect because frankly, one thing is that, I was quite good beating players 26 plus, or lower rated, but the first time I'm playing against all best players in the world. And actually, it was exceptionally strong, this Linares. This tournament was always strong, but this time 14 players and 9 out of top 10 were playing. Only Nigel Short, who was preparing for the World Championship match, I think, with Garry Kasparov, he decided to skip this tournament. All other top 10 players were playing. So It was Kasparov, Karpov, Ivanchuk, Gelfand, Anand, Shirov, Yusupov, Salov, Timman, Bilavsky. I mean, just an amazing field. So, yeah, that was a very reassuring tournament for me because finally I made +2. I took fifth place out of 14 players. But the most important that I didn't know what to expect. Maybe I would be really beaten up badly there. But actually, I I mean, I understood I can fight on equal terms with the best players on the world because even if I had such a rating, but it was not so clear to me if I can really resist against the best of the best. But I made a draw with Kasparov, with Karpov, beat Ivanchuk, managed to beat Gelfand also. So okay, I understood I belong to the top 10. It's really my rate. I'm not too overrated. Yeah. So that was, and the game against Vasily was, yeah, somewhere in the first half of the tournament. It was not a very successful tournament for Vasily Ivanchuk, but still, he was at that time, I believe, number 3 in the world, actually, after Kasparov and Karpov. So, of course, beating him with black, well, it was a big, surprise for me, and I was extremely happy after that game. So let me show you after this small introduction, because I also want to a little bit to tell you the stories of that time, of the atmosphere, of certain historical facts. I think hopefully it will be interesting for all of you, also not only the games. But now let's move to the point. Vasily started with e4. At that time, I was a Sicilian player. I liked to play Rouser, and it will be not the only Rouser in this course. I won a couple of other nice games in this opening. So knight f6, knight c3, d6, and Ivanchuk played bishop c4. He have tried bishop g5 against me also more than once, but this time bishop c4, queen b6. I like this move because I didn't want to transpose to, this typical so-called Velimirovich attack, which is supposed to be very dangerous actually for black, because white is usually more or less the game continues like this, and then white is trying to play queen e2, long castle, and then g4, g5. A lot of theory, very, very dangerous. So that's why I wanted to avoid it and played queen b6 many times. Knight b3. Well, another moves here are knight takes c6, bc6. That was Topalov played against me twice at least. Knight db5 was also played against me by Topalov, and if I'm not mistaken, by Vasily also, and actually by Garry Kasparov maybe as well. So many games I played, but knight b3 is supposed to be the main move in this position. Oh, by the way, just for your opening knowledge, that it's very, very important that after bishop e3, black can take on b2, and knight db5 is not winning. Strangely enough, you have this theoretical position with the bishop on f1, and this is already winning for white. But with the bishop developed already on c4, strangely enough, it's not working so well because black has queen b4 move. Very important that the bishop on c4 is hanging. And somehow after knight c7 check, there is king d8, for instance, and in time, black is in time. So bishop e3 is not good after queen takes b2. So knight b3 is the main move, e6, bishop f4. At that time, it was a very rare move. Now it's definitely the main move in the position already. Okay, bishop e3 is a very typical Sicilian. It's possible to play like this, f4, a6. The point is that with the queen b6 move, black managed to discoordinate his opponent's pieces, because normally, obviously, you want to put your bishop on b3. So now, with a knight on b3, white will also lose a tempi, actually, putting his bishop on to d3. Let's say bishop d3, b5. And it's a typical Sicilian, which is supposed to be perfectly fine for black, just a complicated game. So bishop f4 is a very, very interesting, probably, I believe still is the best move. Attacking the pawn on d6, knight e5, bishop e2. So now white's idea is to remove this bishop from f4 and then to go f4 to win a tempi. So of course, blacks preferably should try to get to c4. Once white plays f4, then that black can manage knight c4. That's quite important. Otherwise, white would probably win a tempo or two. So I played a6. Basically, that's all I knew at that time. I believe that bishop d7 is more precise. So then later I was not so happy with the a6 move, and I played bishop d7. I remember I played against Judith Polgar, actually against Garry Kasparov also in Horgen 1995 as well, with good results. So bishop d7 probably I would recommend you from the theoretical point of view, because after a6, actually the theory was bishop e3, here queen c7, f4, knight c4. Well, at least black manages to get his knight to c4. But in fact, after takes and queen f3, yeah, probably white has a certain initiative. And again, if I remember well, in some rapid game, Vasiliev played against me like this, and I was experiencing problems here. So all in all, I would recommend just to play maybe bishop e3, and that might give white something. But for this particular game, important to note that there were no engines yet at that time. So everything was new and not clear at all. So this position after bishop e3, queen c7 was supposed to be fine for black. So Vasiliev was searching for some new ways, and he came up with bishop g3, which was a novelty at that time, a very dangerous move, very tricky move. So, but fortunately for me, I think my very first response he didn't look at. So he started to play over the board, and actually after long consideration, I managed to find the best move, clearly the best move in the position. According to nowadays engines, also not such a trivial move. I played h5. h5, it's very important to, because of course, first what I was considering is to play in the same fashion, queen c7 followed by knight c4. But unfortunately, it doesn't work already. So, well, maybe the relatively best is to play knight g6, but that should not be good, because knight belongs to c4 in this position. The problem is that after knight c4 here, white can play queen d4. And actually, I realized it during the game that it's extremely dangerous. b5, it's pretty direct play, and now e5. That's why Vasily wanted his bishop on g3, just to support the e5 move. Takes, and I have to retreat with a knight to d7, which is not the most active and fortunate square. And after long castle, it seems that white is better here, much better actually. Bishop b7 is probably the only move. And now simply bishop takes c4, b takes c4, knight d2, and white just wants to take on c4 and to get his knight to d6. Also knight d4, knight d6 is a serious threat, so white is much better here. So I started to think what to do, and then I came up with this h5 move, which looks strange. It doesn't. First of all, once you play h5, it's becoming much more difficult to castle short already. But there is a nuance, very important nuance here, that in case of f4, now I have already knight g4. I mean, and I'm threatening h4, knight e3, so that is not good for white. Let's say if queen d2, then I play h4, bishop f4, and now let's say queen c7. Now white is not threatening f4 already, so that must be okay. But the main point is that in case of h3, that's how Vasily played, and now I can already play queen c7. That was my idea. Actually, in fact, bishop d7 is probably the best move in this position, and I would say that this is a clear-cut way for black to equalize in this line. So in bishop g3, only move h5, and now after h3, probably the best is bishop d7, because if queen d2, preparing f4, then black has rook c8, and then knight c4. He always has after f4. And in case of f4, queen e3, this tactical way of playing looks a bit dubious, because bishop h2, let's say knight c6, my queen on e3 is looking a little strange, but there is no way white can make use of it. So white has nothing better than to exchange queens actually after queen d3, and You probably know already that in Sicilians, usually endgames are quite okay for black. So finally, this position, which is maybe a little bit more comfortable for white, but basically completely fine for black. So that was even better. But my idea was to play queen c7 and after f4, which is the plan, knight c4. So what the difference is, it's well, quite, I would say, subtle. So now the point is that with h5, h3 included, this the same plan with queen d4 is already black can meet it with b5, e5, d5, fe5, and now what is the difference is that the bishop on g3 is hanging. So ef6 is not threatening. That's why black has a chance to play bishop b7 now, because if ef, of course, queen takes g3, and let's say after long castle, knight goes already to d5, which is much more active, and black is actually doing very well here. So finally, after bishop b7, probably the best move is short castle, rook d8, and then again knight d5 with a complicated, unclear position, double-edged play. So that is the whole point of playing h5, that after h3 in this particular line, in this position, yeah, that the bishop on g3 is hanging and I have bishop b7 move. So that's why white has to take on c4, queen takes c4, queen f3. But still, of course, okay, black has two bishops, but white is much better developed. So black's king is in the center, so it's still not clear if black has managed to equalize. I played h4. I think it's a good move. I cannot really play b5. The problem is, yeah, because of e5 and my rook is hanging on a8, so h4 first. Vasily went bishop h2. Maybe bishop f2 was interesting. It's difficult to say where the bishop is better placed. Here, of course, it's a bit more active. From other point of view, on h2, it supports the push e5 and maybe somewhere having pressure on the d6 pawn. So a difficult choice to make. To my luck, Vasily was spending a lot of time here, so he got quite rather quickly. He got into time trouble already around move 25. He was seriously short of time. So bishop h2, and yeah, now the black's best move was to equalize actually with d5, which was a kind of solid equalizer. I well, maybe overestimated my position. I liked it. I thought that I can play for more. But actually, d5 is a correct way of playing because, okay, e5, knight e4 is not dangerous at all. Well, and after e d5, knight takes d5, takes. There is a certain development issue, but, well, since white cannot castle short, legally, cannot do it because of queen on c4, and after long castle, black is just in time to play bishop f5, probably followed by bishop e4, and then developing, and the position is fine for black, not worse. Black is not worse. Not sure if any better, but not worse. Maybe I was not sure about knight d2 move because, okay, it's easy if you're a computer, it's easy to assess this position, takes, queen takes c2 as slightly better for black. But in fact, white plays short castle, has some ideas, rook c1, f5, humanly, it looks quite dangerous, this position, but according to engines, black is fine with, for some reason, with bishop d7 move. Even gives slightly better for black, but again, over the board, very difficult to assess it. So I decided to play bishop d7. I saw no reason to panic. Long castle, rook c8, rook h1, logical play, b5. I was very happy with my position, and I thought, okay, because of this pressure on the c line, I want to play b4. Of course, my king is on the center, but two bishops, and frankly, it still looks to me perfectly fine for black this position. But for some reason, well, chess is a very complicated game, and Sicilian is a very complicated opening. So I don't know why, but nowadays engines say that after a3, white is better actually here. Of course, it's important. Black wants to play b4 sooner or later. So a3 also, well, the other thing is that it gives certain tactical ideas, like even sometimes d5, bishop takes a3, but nothing seems to work at the moment. And if I remember correctly, I thought maybe I can play queen c7. That was my plan. playing this game. So I just want a5 before and was happy about my position, but tactically it seems that it doesn't work so well, because after king b1, a5, e5, before, now the game gets extremely sharp. ef6, bc, f5, e5, cb2, and now queen d3. Only move for white to be better, but after queen d3, white is much better. Actually, the only move to stay in the game for black is rook h6 here, and the line goes on, and but ends up in a better position for white. So maybe the best is to play bishop e7, king b1. Okay, you have to castle one day, because e5, f5 one day will come. So castles, and now g4, hg, bishop takes g3. Well, a very typical Sicilian position, which is well, when you play it over the board, you really don't know who is better and why. Yeah, it's black has his own play on the queen side. White can, has a certain potential attack on the g line. According to engine, it's somewhat better for white, but not so clear. So let's say before AB, queen takes before f5, and the game goes on. Frankly, again, if I wouldn't know the assessment of a computer, I would be quite satisfied with black. I would think that black is having a normal game, a very, very sharp, complicated game, but objectively it's better for white. And a very typical Sicilian story, actually, that Vasily played queen f2, kind of logical move, because he's protecting the pawn on c2, and the idea that in case of b4, white has rook d4. Yeah, even though even here after queen c7, rook takes b4, d5, let's say rook d4, de4, black has a compensation, some compensation for the pawn, maybe even enough, but white is doing fine, obviously. But strangely enough, queen f2 is a very serious mistake. So basically, at least talking theoretically, according to the computer of assessment, so it turns the game from 0-7 for white to 0-7 for black. So immediately the advantage changed the side. I mean, that is Sicilian. Yeah, one mistake, not even so obvious mistake. Yeah, because also, I can understand Vasily wants, first of all, he's preparing e5, that after this I don't have bishop c6 move. And also sometimes queen can enter somewhere on a7 in some lines. So looks like a normal move, but after queen c7, the move which he probably missed, or at least underestimated, this retreat, now actually it occurs that very difficult to defend against b4. So black just wants to play b4 and a5, a4, start pushing pawns. Here already white is in considerable trouble, because a3 in this position doesn't help so much already, because a5 and still b4 is on the agenda. So black starts his attack quicker, just one tempi ahead here. And Ivanchuk played e5. That was probably his idea behind queen f2. So queen c7, e5, b4. That's the point. Now ef, bc seems to be already better for black. Of course, knight e4 is, well, it's very poor, because now I can take on e4, play d5, and rook e2, g6. And now, well, it's just strategically perfect position for black. I mean, white cannot really get f5 or g4, everything under control, blockaded on the center, on the king side, and black will start his attack with a5, a4. So black is simply positionally better here. But Vasily, he had a very tricky idea. In his mind, he went rook d3. Well, again, fortunately that he spent a lot of time calculating variations, and that was pretty helpful for me at the end of the game. So rook d3, very interesting. It's not really working so well, but a very tricky move. So now d takes e5. Well, it's also, I mean, black is doing fine here, but the position is still extremely complicated. So I could have simply played like this, for instance, takes queen b8, rook c8, queen c8, ef6, gf6. So equal material. Well, you see that my king is it's pretty safe. Of course, I'm not going to castle this game already, that is clear. But I have two bishops, and those pawns f7, f6, e6, d6 are protecting the king pretty well. And let's say knight d4, bishop e7, bishop g1. Bishop should try to get to better square, maybe rook g8. Black is definitely doing well. How much? I mean, is it really better for black or not? Difficult to say. I mean, the game is still very sharp because I mean, still, this king on e8 will be an issue for the rest of the game for black. Has to be very careful not to get some kind of tricks like knight f5 at some point. You know, the king can become vulnerable one day. But black is better, is probably slightly better objectively. But I decided, well, I was more ambitious already. I played de5, fe5, bc3. So the idea is that now in case of EF, now white has an additional opportunity to play EF6, queen takes h2, and rook takes d7. And actually it would have been very dangerous, very, very dangerous for black, but I saw that there is a queen g3 move. Actually very unpleasant for white because now he cannot avoid changing queens after queen g3. Queen takes g3, cb2 check, king b1, let's say hg, and finally, well, black end up simply in a better endgame. If he will win or not, who knows? But black is better here. But Vasily played rook takes e3, and now I would like you to, if you wish, of course, to think in this position. And it's not an easy position. I mean, very, very complicated, but try to go as deep as you can, to spend as much time as you have and as you wish, and to come up with some lines maybe in this position. How would you assess the positions which occur after those lines, and what would be your move here if you would be black? So let's consider two moves in this position. There are two major moves, queen b8, and another one is queen takes c3. As you probably already understand, that of course I took on c3, queen takes c3, because it's giving black good attacking chances, looks nice, you spoil the pawn structure, you have rook and bishop against queen, but white kings become vulnerable, and so on. So I actually liked very much, even if you want aesthetically, this kind of play takes, knight gets to d5, everything is very well protected. But in fact, queen b8 was a stronger move. It was, I just missed, if you remember the previous lesson, this bishop c6 move, which Gary probably missed in his calculation. I've also missed something similar already now for me, from my side. Queen b8. What I didn't like, in case of rook f1, knight d5 is possible to play. Queen takes f7 check, king d8. Here it's pretty obvious that black shouldn't have enough play for a piece, but still, it doesn't look completely clear, at least in a practical game. But this should be better for black, definitely. I was not sure actually about rook takes c8 check. Bishop takes c8 in order to keep the pin. So now ef6 doesn't work. Queen takes h2, and white doesn't have enough threats here, so black can parry the attack and win the game with a piece up. But after rook f1, what to do after rook f1? This move, I remember I spent a lot of time here trying to understand how to proceed, because the idea is that white is attacking this f7 pawn. In case, let's say, if black plays a move like bishop b7, now white can already take on f6, queen takes h2, fg7. Yeah, you see, and after bishop takes g7, queen takes f7 check, and white actually is just winning. So white is creating a threat ef, queen h2, fg, and I couldn't really find the way how to parry this threat. For example, yes, knight d5 is an option. It's perfectly playable. Queen takes f7 check, king d8. Knight d4, queen b6. Let's say bishop g1. But it looks very dangerous. Actually, nowadays engines play very cool move bishop d7 and pretend that black is at least not worse, maybe even better. But in a practical game, it's not so obvious. Yeah, white has quite an attack, two pawns for the piece, and a lot of initiative. So I was not sure about this, even though objectively it's perfectly fine for black. But now maybe it's time try to find the best move for black. Actually, that is something I already told you in the lesson one, that it's very easy to miss kind of this small moves, not forcing moves. Yeah, and here it looks like extremely sharp position, but I remember my course on strategical thinking. There was a lot about prophylactics in this course, and yeah, it seems that this position is actually about prophylactics here. A very very powerful move is Rook H7. It's just I don't think it even crossed my mind such a move. Rook H7. What is it? I'm not even threatening much, but in fact, as you see, the idea is that after now I'm just protecting, defending against EF6, because now I can take on H2, FG, and Rook takes G7, protecting the pawn on G7. So a pure prophylactic, quite beautiful move. I mean, really very unexpected way of protecting the pawn on F7. And it seems that actually here black is just much better. I mean, have a very good winning chances. White doesn't have enough attack for the piece. He can actually take back the piece, but get into quite a difficult endgame. For instance, if white tries to get his knight into the game, then let's say knight e2, then simply bishop b7. You see that the pawn now is protected after ef queen h2, and even if it still doesn't look humanly so clear, but actually queen a7, it seems that white has some threats, but not enough. Not enough. Queen c7, knight e4, and now g6. Very quiet move, and then followed by rook h5. Actually, again, white has a very active position visually, but in fact, it's black is winning. Yeah, there is not enough play for the piece. So after rook h7, probably white's best is to play queen f4. At least now he can get back the piece, but then he gets into a difficult endgame. After bishop b7, taking back the piece, queen takes f4, and then gf, and this endgame is, well, if not lost, at least very, very difficult for white. Because equal pawns, and black has two bishops, and g2 pawn is weak. So queen b8 was the best move. But yeah, only in case if you see rook h7 move in advance. But yeah, that was not the case with me. But also, you know, quite often, yeah, I actually liked very much queen takes c3, so I wanted to make it work. Yeah, I wanted to play queen takes c3, so queen b8, yes. I mean, this position, rook f1, I couldn't immediately see anything very clear, so decided, okay, I go for queen c3, which is a good enough move, but things, I mean, it actually looks very, very good, but white has the only way to fight against queen takes c3, but he's with the best play, actually white is at least not worse here. B takes c3, bishop a3 check. Okay, that's a point that with a tempi bishop gets on a3, knight gets to d5. White has a very strong, black has a very strong initiative, potential attack, and also I'm very quickly castling, yeah, in and entering the other rook into the game. So looks very nice, but Vasily, he spent his almost last remaining minutes, which he had, and he found a very, very powerful resource. Because let's say if king b1, knight d5, this position, even if engines nowadays manage to find equality for white by playing bishop f4, only move, just trying to get the bishop into the defense, not to get mated at least quickly, but still knight takes c3 check, king a1 castles, and computer assesses this position as equal. But I can tell you in a practical game, it's definitely, I mean, every player would prefer to be black here, because black has a, well, potential attack, easy play, this weak king on a1. I mean, only engines can hold such positions, so I don't think it is equal, yeah? Even if computer says it is, but we are not computers, and it's very difficult to play this position with white. For instance, queen takes h4, rook c4 seems to be very strong. So on top of everything, sometimes I have this rook a4 idea, some mating threats. So probably white's best is bishop c1, bishop e7, then engine is playing bishop b2, pretends it's equal. No, don't believe engine. I mean, for sure, black has at least practical better chances here, no doubt about it. So Vasily didn't like it. Probably he went king d2. Well, quite a brave move, but the best move. Knight d5, and now he found a very powerful resource, which I missed or underestimated by playing queen takes c3. Because, you know, what I need, I just want to take on c3, castle, rook c8, bishop b4, so it's just like mate, yeah, simply mate is coming. Okay, white has a certain material advantage, queen against rook and bishop, but the king, the difference in the king position is very serious. Yeah, black king is going to be very safe soon, and white's king, you know, never anymore in this game. But there is a tactical resource, rook e4, very strong move, and here, well, the point is that again, chess is a practical game. Also, if I remember correctly, Ivanchuk had already maybe not more than 5 minutes left, and it's move 25 or 15 moves without increment, of course, and in an extremely complicated position. So, of course, it's a very bad situation. Yeah. So, I mean, in a practical sense, this position is not easy to play correctly, even with a lot of time on the clock. But with few minutes left, I was getting maybe overexcited, and I wanted to, maybe I played a little too hasty. Yeah, I took on c3 with a rook, actually missing a very, very strong resource which white has. Objectively, the best is probably knight takes c3. Actually, both moves lead to a draw with the best play. But knight takes c3, but white has rook g4. This is the idea. So you see white is counterattacking. Very, very important here for white to create threats as well, because if not, then if black just manages to stabilize his position, I think that he will slowly but surely organize a very powerful attack. But after rook g4, now the game actually not really threatening yet to take on g7 because of knight e4 check. But now bishop b5, and I will just show you the best line according to engine. The game gets really crazy. King e1, knight d5. So black wants to get some bishop b4 check somewhere. Rook takes g7, bishop b4 check, king c3 now for some reason. And okay, f7 of course is hanging. Yeah, bishop takes c3 check, king d1, and rook c7. And this position is, according to engine, is equal. Okay, whatever it means, you know. Again, as I've mentioned already in this course, in my first lesson, actually doesn't really matter if this position objectively equal or better for white or for black. It's so complicated. One single mistake can cost you game for both sides, yeah, for white and black. But again, humanly, visually, it looks, of course, I would take black here because the king is really weak. But I thought rook takes c3 is even stronger, and actually it happened to be the best move in a practical sense, because Vasily spent, I think, all his remaining time, and already with maybe 1 minute on the clock, he played a decisive mistake here. He went rook g4, probably because he wanted to play knight takes c3, rook g4, and here he actually didn't have time to find the best move in this position, and try to think here, try maybe to spend a bit of time, try to find the best defense for white. Defense or attack, I don't even know, because actually it could easily turn the tables here. I mean, yeah, in these positions, of course, one move, yeah, the price of a move is very high. Yeah, one small mistake and the game is over. Yeah, that is what happened, because rook g4 looks pretty logical, but actually it's losing the game already. But white had a very, very powerful resource, rook d4 here, just threatening rook takes d5. And now things are getting, well, very, very complicated, because rook takes d5 is a threat. The black's problem is that after rook c8, there is c4. He has a lot of checks, bishop b4 check, but it doesn't seem to work so well. And if knight retreats, then there is a problem to castle for black. So it's a very, very concrete play. Yeah, just move per move. But it seems to be that here white is better actually after rook c8, c4. In case of bishop b2, that is a very logical move just to protect the rook, and still, white just want to castle with black next. But now white has tactics: rook takes d5, e d5, knight c5. Very important that the bishop is not on a3 already, so this square is available for the knight, and again stopping black from castling because the d7 is hanging. And after bishop c6, e6. So white is first who organizes an attack against black's king. You see how it is important. Yeah, you see this fight for initiative, fight for attack. So the first one who creates threats will be the winning side. Yes, here white is close to win because he's just by tempi organizing an attack quicker actually than black. So rook d4 seems to be a very dangerous move, but here black has an amazing resource. When I saw it, computer finds it, and I really enjoyed actually this move because it's so difficult. It's so subtle, this move. Yeah, that if I offer you to think here and to try to find the best way of playing for black here. Actually, the only way for black to keep balance in this position. So the move is a5. Amazing move. I mean, yeah, why a5? Rook takes d5 is threatening. Why all of a sudden you move just this pawn? But why? Because after rook takes d5, black has bishop b4. That is the point. That is a point, and the bishop is protected on b4 now. And here it seems that the game ends in a draw by force after bishop b4. So, of course, the idea is that in case of rook takes d7, black has rook f3 check. That is a point, yeah, taking the queen and even, I guess, even winning here. So white's best is rook d3, and now rook takes b3 check, king e2. Absolutely crazy position. Rook b2 and queen a7. Queen a7 is maybe the only already move which saves white, but rook takes c2 check, king f1, and it seems that it's a forced perpetual check check because white cannot play king d1 because of bishop a4. Very nice tactics, and of course if queen a8 check, rook c8 check. So you see, yeah, need also to calculate variations here. In fact, it's not only about calculation, it's as you see it, yeah, as you see already, it's about being extremely resourceful. That is actually the main point in such complicated positions. When the king is weak, you are attacking or you are defending against attack, is finding these hidden resources, because those are the moves which usually at least one of the two opponents are missing. Yes, such moves like a5, or maybe even in time trouble, you can easily miss that after king d1 there is bishop a4. So the one who is more precise, who is more efficient in finding such moves, will prevail, yeah, in the game. So that is the point of a5. And now what else? It seems that now after also if knight takes a5, already castles, rook takes d5, and now rook c8. Now already rook c8. The difference is that after takes on c2, king a1, bishop b4 check. If a5, knight takes a5 was not included, that white would just go king f1, and after, let's say, check, takes, and now knight is on a5. So black can play bishop takes a5, actually with a certain advantage in this endgame. White still has to fight for a draw here. So you see how subtle is this a5 move. So here rook fc8 works, and now queen a7 is the best move. It's, well, black is not risking here already. Black has a draw in many different ways, but actually no more than a draw. It seems that white holds in this position. So after a5, now the best move is bishop f4. Bishop f4, just entering, just getting the bishop into the game. if bishop b4, king c1, for example, and it seems white is better. Don't ask me why again, but seems to be better for white. So rook c8 is the best move. And now c4. Okay, it's again, black has a lot of threats, bishop b4 check, a4. So white's position is extremely dangerous. But okay, c4, and now, but black's position is dangerous as well. So it's very double-edged. Both players are actually in attack here. And now a4 is very important move. a4, let's say if cd, ab, black has bishop c5, and he's at least not worse. So the best, according to engine, is knight c1, and now knight b6. And I've analyzed this position further on. It is still extremely complicated, a lot of different resources for both sides, but finally it's probably actually equal. Yeah, probably should end in a draw again here. But of course, it's an incredible mess. Yeah, it's an extremely complicated position. So here, well, with such a limited amount of time, my opponent had like 5 minutes in this position. It's really not enough. Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't say that I had that much, but still, at least, I mean, not that I had 1 hour, but still, I had maybe 15, 20 minutes left in this position, and this difference, well, happened to be decisive because Vasily played rook g4, now leaving himself maybe 1 or maximum 2 minutes. Again, at that time, it was not clear. I want to remind you, we still played with a mechanical clock. But so, you know, there was a different understanding of time when the flag was getting, you know, getting like this. It means you really have not so much time left. So we didn't know how many seconds exactly you have, but it was clear to me already that Vasily had, well, less than 2 minutes for, I would remind you, for 14 moves without increment. And actually, after castles, his position is just collapsing. Queen takes h4, rook fc8. So black starts his attack first. What I mentioned here that it's black just needed to stabilize and to start the attack, then white is defenseless here. For example, okay, there is no perpetual. Maybe that is what Vasily was hoping for, that there will be a perpetual check, but no, because king gets to e8 and bishop f8. Black protects his king. So knight d4, bishop b4. Now it's already clear. Black has all pieces in attack, and this poor king on d2 is almost alone, defending against the whole army of black's pieces. It's clear that, well, black should be mating. For instance, in case of king c1, there is more than one way to win for black, but I quite like rook d3. Very nice move because of the pin on the c line, and black has lots of threats. The main one is actually bishop a3 check, king b1, rook d1 mate. So white is just missing one tempi, yeah, to have queen h6 to create some counterattack, but not in time. So king e2, and now bishop b5 check. Very logical. Now everything, you know, goes very naturally and smoothly. I mean, all pieces are in the attack, and white is just lost. For example, if king f2, rook takes c2 check, knight takes c2, rook takes c2 check. Well, big material advantage for white, but nice that white is getting mated in every line. Just for aesthetic pleasure, I show you 3 different mates. So one is, let's say, if king g3 check, king f3 check, king e4, rook c4 mate. Quite nice mating structure. Well, same goes for king f3, bishop e2 check. For example, this is a nice mate. It's also mate. Or, okay, if king f4, at minimum, I can take the rook with check, completely winning, or king e4, rook c4 mate. This we saw already. And another mating, quite nice mating net is king g1, rook c1 check, king f2. Of course, you can check on e1, but even better is rook f1 check, king g3, bishop e1 mate. Very nice. So Vasily played knight takes b5 with his flag almost falling already. Rook takes c2 check. If king d3, ab, and then, well, black is just threatening rook c3. So king f3, a b5, rook takes b4. Okay, it's clear that white has no defense already. Knight takes before I played, actually, rook c3 was even simpler. Rook c3 check, king g4, rook takes g2 check. And after king h5, Black has many ways to win the game, but maybe the most elegant is knight f6 check. It's quite nice because, okay, queen takes f6, gf is just lost immediately. But if ef6, rook c5 check, yeah, so white is getting mated also. But what I played knight takes before was good enough because rook c3 is threatening, and the idea is that after queen takes before, rook c3 check. And I think here actually Vasily played king e4 and I think lost on time, in fact, but it doesn't matter already because, of course, Black is playing rook c4 check and win, and it is a simple win in the endgame exchange up. So quite a brutal mating attack. You see, it's just one inaccuracy. Was very well played, king d2, rook e4, and one mistake, rook g4, and that's it. You know, the attack is already unstoppable. So quite, quite an exciting game, very complicated, not without mistakes, but a real fight, and actually quite a nice mating attack at the end. Maybe simple, but especially I like this mating variations. I mean, this is quite a nice mate, I would say, in the center of the board, with having a queen up, but kind of unusual mating setup. So that was a game, and for today that's it. I think we will continue with some of my mating attacks in the 90s with the next lesson. Maybe if you behave well, I will show you another mating attack against Garry Kasparov, which I managed to do in 1994 in the lesson 3.